ABS will help me slow down in the dirt.
It won't help me. It might help you. I think the exhaust is definitely a number one first thing on the list to try to sell to the wife. Like, hey, I need a new exhaust. And she's like, well, what's wrong with the one on there? It's brand new. I mean, I hit gear oil. I was going down 100%, and it popped me right back up.
Hey folks, Eric with Ride Adventures, also with me again, Joe Bacal. Going to go through some more of these motorcycle misunderstandings, we're calling it. It's just, again, stuff that we've read and seen and heard over the years out at dinner with riders and on the trail and in the comment sections, and these things that I hope aren't misinforming people, help having them not make the wrong choice based on things that aren't quite explained clearly enough. And one of those to start out with is the suggestion that you can steer your adventure motorcycle or any motorcycle, that you can steer it by only pressuring the foot pegs. I'm going to lob that one out there, and we're going to sort of dissect, is that true? Because it's been said, I've seen it in a couple of videos, a lot of people doing online instruction. We've got our own training videos, we've got our training academies in Bend, Oregon, and Pahrump outside of Las Vegas, and some of the other folks on YouTube have said, and have heard this at dinner, I can only pressure the foot pegs and that will steer the bike.
I haven't done that, so I don't plan on it. Like, I'm not taking my hands off the bars to see if it works, but we know, the certain foot peg pressure will give you the bite that you need and get you the direction you need to go, especially off camber stuff will absolutely help. But I would say, you probably have, you guys probably teach a certain way and certain things, so that's something that I've never actually tried, so I don't want to say that it works perfectly, that's for sure.
It's a weird one to think about. I would say that with everything we're doing on a motorcycle, it's never just one thing. And so what happens is I see guys at dinners and they're explaining that all they do is pressure the pegs, and there's always someone in the crowd that seems confused by this, and then I might see them actually trying it the next day, and they're sort of awkwardly shifting their hips and whatnot. And my point at this is that it is definitely more than just pressuring the foot pegs, because if you were instead to say, keep your bike exactly straight, let's say you welded somehow your bars so that they don't turn, nothing can move. If you lean on one side of your bike on the foot pegs, your bike is going to fall over. What I'm saying is, your bars do have to turn a little bit. Your shoulders, that little counter steering, that little shimmy that happens when we initiate a turn. It's a very subtle little movement, but it is there. And again, I just don't want riders confused by the notion that it is only the foot pegs, because there's always other movements going on.
I wouldn't depend on just your foot pegs. How's that?
Yes.
That's something I wouldn't do.
It is. We get into that with our training, with counterbalance, and there's reasons and moments to pressure those foot pegs. And that can be done from both the seated and the standing position. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of shoot that one down, because I think it's an overgeneralization to say only the foot pegs. All right, another misunderstanding is that traction control will help me climb a hill because I'll have more traction. My traction will be under control. Is that what traction control
sort of
does for us?
I mean, basically it helps with wheel spin. So it's basically like a reverse ABS, right? So when you give it throttle and you start to get wheel spin, the brakes apply and it slows down that rear wheel, where it just starts to get some more bite and moves you forward. Traction control does work. There's no question about it.
We're saying that it will work universally in helping you get up the hill is where I think we have to sort of remind people there's a moment of decision there. You're right, it can keep you from overspinning and digging down into that terrain, whatever it is, sand or whatever, but because it's not perfect, no traction control system is perfect, it can also keep you from getting up the hill.
Yeah, for sure. No, there's two ways that you can look at it. I've been in situations where I think traction control would help in this condition, or it has, and then turn everything off, and I need a lot of wheel spin to get up it, especially in sand. You don't want traction control in sand. That's not going to work. So it just depends on certain conditions and surfaces, but it does work. You can't say it doesn't, because it does. It's just going to depend on the condition that you're trying to apply it to.
Yeah. Let's not accept it as a blanket statement that it's always going to help you. I guess that's what I want to.
Yeah, it's fairly kind of new on the motorcycle side. It's been around on the car side for a long time, but the motorcycle side, I can tell you that the stability control, for instance, is sort of new too. But man, it saved me big time in Mexico. So that actually, I hit gear oil. I was going down 100%. and it popped me right back
In
up.
dirt or pavement, you mean?
I was on pavement,
I was
and
gonna
I
say,
hit gear oil, and I was like, I'm going down. I literally was accepting the fact that I was going down, and then I was pop. It just popped me right back up, and I was like, holy smokes,
Yeah.
sold. But you got to make sure that's turned off in the dirt.
All right, another one here is that you should use and modulate your rear brake in the sand. If you're in heavy sand, that with everything else that's going on, all the things to consider, you should use your rear brake.
So you're saying like dragging the brake a little bit to
Yeah,
get a
there
little
are
more
riders
bite?
that have said that that's
Interesting.
a way of creating stability somehow on the bike.
I can see that. I can.
Really?
I don't do that, or if I do it, I don't realize I'm doing it. I can see it helping with stability, though.
I think this is one of those that's going to be up to the individual. If it works for you, if you can do all that with all that's going on, if you can coordinate the fine feathering of a rear brake, I tend to think that there's already so much rolling resistance in the sand.
Yeah.
That, I mean,
Well-
if you let off the throttle, your rear wheel is kind of stopping on its own anyway.
It's going to depend on effectiveness. How effective is that brake pad against that rotor, right? If it's really grabby, it's going to be a little hard to modulate. Also, you're going to start getting that rotor hot.
Yeah.
Pads are going to start getting hot. Things are getting hot. You're basically doing something that the motorcycle is not really designed to do properly. I'm sure I do it at times, and I don't even realize it. But I wouldn't just drag the brakes, because then you're just going to get it's just not going to go well for the components over time.
Try it. If it works for you, let us know.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
All right, here's another one. Speaking of brakes, ABS will help me slow down in the dirt.
It won't help me. It might help you. I wouldn't. I mean, I've done a lot of ABS testing on the vehicle side for years. Just a ton of testing in the dirt. And I'm telling you, I am the fuse puller, because I cannot drive, at least do that type of work with ABS. Same thing with motorcycles. I mean, you got to turn off the systems in the dirt. The reason you can turn them off is because you need to turn them off. What happens is, just to kind of break it down, is as you apply the brakes on your motorcycle and the ABS starts to get activated, and you're on a low mu surface, like you're on a gravel surface, let's say, your stopping distance is going to be longer, because what happens is the system's activating, it's and it doesn't recover, meaning it doesn't turn off. It's just quick enough, I guess is the best way to put it. So you can blow corners, things like that. You just don't have control, because the system is basically overriding what you really want it to do, and then that's stop the motorcycle. So it works great on pavement. It's not really designed for the dirt, if that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, I think there are pretty clear DOT type studies, Department of Transportation, that say that since the advent of ABS, overall motorcycle traffic fatalities or whatever, it has improved from a pavement perspective, people staying safer. But I don't think that the DOT is measuring ABS results in the dirt. As accomplished riders and travelers, we are both saying ABS has never been a good thing for me in the dirt. While you can all do what you want for yourselves, I would generally say, and we advise all of our customers on tours and on trips and whatnot, when we get to that dirt section, just deal with without the ABS. Of course, a lot of bikes these days have enduro modes where it's only 70% sensitivity of the ABS system, or 50% or whatever it is, and that's great if it works for you, but experiment with this. I would say that's the big thing.
Yeah.
Actually test, find a spot where you can test yourself and measure your stopping distance on different types of surfaces. Try it with or without, or
Especially-
in enduro mode or whatever, and know for yourself.
Especially
whether
the
it's
front
good.
brake with ABS. See how that feels.
Yeah.
That'll get your attention pretty
Yeah.
quick.
The notion is that I can stop as fast from the standing position as I can from a sitting position.
Gosh, that's
What is
really
the situation? We have to make sure we're thinking about a similar. I'm going to say that one obvious one is that if I'm in a standing position on pavement and I slam on those brakes because an animal ran out in front of me, or a car or whatever, I don't know how I'm going to keep myself from going over the bars. Most of these bikes have such great power in the brakes now that either I'm going to rotate the bike over and do a endo sort of stoppy forward roll, or myself, I'm going to go over the handlebars, but I don't know how a full emergency brake can be done in the standing position.
Well, I think you're tall. Your center of gravity's tall, which isn't going to help. But I think
You're
just
right.
from a modulation standpoint, so think about it. If you're sitting on a motorcycle and you're doing a hard brake on the pavement, your modulation from your hand and your foot is going to be much more controlled. Versus standing up, now your position's going to be off. You're probably leaning a little bit more forward. Your grip's going to be different. I think it's going to be harder to modulate to get the effectiveness to be smooth in stopping quickly. Does that make sense?
The standing position, you're at a more
I just
awkward
don't-
angle
yeah,
for
I don't-
all your
I don't-
levers
I
and
don't
controls.
think-
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to be the right. I think it'd be harder. I'm not saying you couldn't, but it's going to be harder for sure.
we talked about that in our to sit or stand video
Yeah.
from years ago.
Yeah.
So that's a good point too. It's not just your physicality and where your weight is over the bike. It's also that control.
Yeah, your position of your levers and where they're set up when you're standing. You know, if your levers are back a little bit because you're standing, standing upright, you're having to adjust your hands differently, your feet, your ankles. There's some adjustment I feel is going to probably make it more challenging standing up to get the good stuff.
It could be said though that in an off-road situation, if you are on undulating terrain and whatever, it's bouncy potholes, whatever, and now you do have to make an emergency stop from say 60 miles an hour down to stop before the vehicle, having your butt up off the seat in at least a partially standing position can help you keep contact with the surface of whatever you're on a little bit better, such that you might be a little bit quicker stopping in that standing position.
Yeah, in the dirt for sure. Like I'm thinking to myself when I'm heading down, like on a motocross track or something, I'm heading down a whooped out section downhill. My butt's on the fender and I'm on the binders, as I start to get to the bottom. So I'm absolutely standing up. I'm not sitting on the seat, or even just random off-road adventure stuff. So I guess I'm thinking pavement sitting down maybe, but standing up maybe dirt would be better. Gosh, I don't know. That's a tough one.
It's going to be unique to every situation.
Because if you put your butt back and now your hands are forward, they're not like this. They're more in the position that you want them to be in. If your feet are better on the pegs to get the right braking because your butt's in the air, but you're leaned forward like that, like with arms anyway. I think you might get better braking that way.
There's a situation for everything, I guess you could say, where it's not universally
Yeah, I don't
true.
know. I don't have the right answer. I'm just trying to think, and I can see both sides.
Okay, how about a gear-related sort of misunderstanding or something that's been misstated? Goretex breathes well, so I can wear it on the hottest days.
Do you wear climb gear?
I do.
Does it work?
It works great. It's not a full Goretex jacket is not something I necessarily want on the hottest days. So I would say that. So, Goretex has its vapor release capabilities. It is perhaps better than wearing like a full rubber, whatever kind of other impermeable, waterproof textile. But I guess what we see people saying is that they're coming to one of our training clinics. They know it's going to be hot, and they think that because they've got Goretex, it's going to breathe well enough for them to handle the slow speed training that we do, hovering over a 200-degree engine. And in fact, that's just the misunderstanding, is that you probably want to find a way to get that jacket off you, but to still maintain padding and protection. And that's why I've promoted endlessly body armor systems like Alpine Stars makes and others do, to allow you to remove that jacket, but to still have your skeleton and your bones and everything protected.
I think picking a jacket, especially in that condition, I like the zippers for the vents, especially doing it when you're riding. I know it sounds crazy, but so many of us do it while we're riding. I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'll take my hand off. I'm unzipping stuff, and I'm probably not the best choice, but maybe it's a good choice when you decide to buy the jacket that you want. Maybe just see how easy they are to grab, because you are going to probably end up doing it while you're riding, because we all seem to do that. At least I do. That definitely helps. The vents definitely will start cooling you off, and that might help from the Goretex side.
Folks also say you got to change out your exhaust. Is that true?
I think that's usually one of the number one picks for me too. I'm like, oh, I got to get rid of the stock exhaust. A lot of times, at least some of these new bikes, they're quiet for one, which obviously you want a little more hit to it, but they're heavy. They have integrated cats in them. Again, I'm not saying do that. Obviously, you want to try to stay as legal as you can, but man, they're just so cumbersome, and I tend to try to get rid of all that stuff. I live in a state where I don't need it. But yeah, I think the exhaust is definitely a number one first thing on the list to try to sell to the wife. Like, hey, I need a new exhaust, and she's gonna be like, well, what's wrong with the one on there? It's brand new.
Okay, this is the kind of thing that comes to everybody's budget too. If you've got the budget, fine, go ahead and get aftermarket. But if you're trying to be careful whether you're spending on aftermarket exhaust, will reduce that weight. Oftentimes, same muffler be half the weight OEM versus aftermarket, but it's also taken away a lot of heat in my experience too. And so if the wife is concerned, oh yeah, well it's going to be cooler for you if she is riding on the back with you or whatever. And so
the OEMs tend to, I mean, they've got a lot of rules. They've got to get through a lot of certifications. They probably don't want to put it on as well. I mean, they're like, well, we have to do this to get past this, noise test or emission test. So trust me, they're probably going home and changing them as well, but they have to, from a factory OEM side, selling at the dealership, it's got to come this way. Is it something you want to keep? I don't know. I'm not one to keep the stock exhaust.
all right, another one we've heard is that adventure boots will protect my feet and ankles. And I guess where we're going with that is that, a lot of manufacturers are taking advantage of this rising adventure bike category and making adventure specific parts and gear. Sometimes the word adventure is showing up on stuff that doesn't necessarily give you the best protection, meaning if the side of a boot is really just simple leather, other than maybe laces in the front, I would say that it is not going to protect you. Just because it says adventure does not mean it's as protective as you might want it to be, or especially compared to like a full motocross boot. Something that has actual plastic shanks and construction to it to protect your ankles and whatnot.
I find that maybe more experienced guys when they're buying, they tend to maybe have a combination of some motocross type of gear, like especially maybe the Alpinestars boots, things that are really strong and they're used to using, and they've broken them in where they're so comfortable for them. They just don't change into an adventure boot. Maybe they have adventure pants, but they still keep their motocross boot or something like that. I think there's a little bit of a combination of different gear, and I'm sure you do it, I do it. I'll have kind of a little bit of both. I don't just focus on one, like adventure gear.
Well, I think what the manufacturers are doing is, by calling it adventure or by designing it as they are, they're considering that sometimes riders have to do some walking on an adventure ride. Maybe you ran out of gas. Maybe you're parking the bike to walk a mile for some incredible viewpoint in a national park or whatever it is. And so there is a point to having something a little more lightweight and pliable, like a leather-sided boot.
I see that.
Walking 2 miles in a pair of Alpinestars Tech 10s or top-level motocross boots like that. It's like walking in ski boots. It's not a real comfortable experience. So consider that, they might be calling it the adventure boot, and you are an adventure rider, and so you think it fits your category. I would say just don't assume it's the best of protection. Anyway, I hope that's information that helps. If there are other misunderstandings or things that you've heard out there that might be confusing or misleading or whatever, let us know. Put it in the comments below. Ask questions through email or however, let us know, and Joe and I would be glad to help you.
Absolutely.
Answer those questions. So thanks for watching, everyone. Right on. We'll see you soon.